Thanks, Amanda. Awesome. How you guys doing? Good? The back? Yes? Side contingent? Yes? Who wants to start a podcast? Man, like 2 people? Sean does. You do. 3. None of you guys. So, what's your interest? The food? The food was good, right? You came for the food? Good? Who is like thinking about a podcast? Kind of, sort of, maybe. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Should I eat it? Is this better? Eating it? Not eating it? Eating it? Oh, I gotta eat it. Alright. No, just kidding. Alright, cool. So who definitely like tried to start a podcast and then was like, yeah. Nice. Brave man. I love it. Cool. Alright, so who tried blogging back in the day when it was really hot? Alright. And then who's still blogging today? Not very many, right? Okay, so that's kind of the first lesson. Alright? So I'm going to get into 10 steps, 10 decisions, if you will, on how to start a podcast. And these are ones that you're not going to hear about a lot because you read the blogs, you read, the vlogs, you watch the vlogs, you hear about, you need your colors and your title. I'm not going to get into that today. I'm going to get into the meat because I'm running 2 podcasts right now. And I'm going to actually go through some of the really important things that'll allow you to do it for the long term, right? So if you started blogging back in, 02 to 06, and you were writing, and then you kind of trailed off because it lost popularity, and you want to sustain something like that, and maybe you want to get into doing podcasts, these steps are going to help you to sustain it longer. Does that make sense? You with me? Everybody's still awake? Okay. These are the 2 podcasts that I do. Tax Pro Nation. This is for independent tax professionals, which is probably nobody in this room. Super niche, right? Super niche. And then this is the Dolan Diaries. This is my personal podcast. So you can kind of think about it like work, personal. I'm a creative, filmmaker, director, writer, musician. I love creative stuff. So naturally, podcasts kind of led to that. But if you like to hear yourself talk, it's also helpful. Do podcasts. So you can do it on a variety of topics. So I just want to tell you my why on why I do this. This is kind of, who knows like a Gary Vaynerchuk? Anybody knows that in here? Some people. He always talks about legacy. There's a ton of gurus online that talk about legacy. This is my legacy, right? This is long term. Kids are going to listen to this. This is for creativity, building my network, attracting other creative people that I want to work with. This is business. This is for attracting customers and building an audience around what we do as a business. Does that make sense? If you're really ninja baller, you can do both in one podcast. Okay? So it really depends on your positioning and what you want to do, but we're going to talk about this. So, why? I told you a little bit about why I do the podcast, but you got to really internalize why you do the podcast. Why are you going to choose the podcast that you're going to do? Is it going to be a short-term transaction or a long-term thing that you're doing, right? And you really got to answer this question. Because ask this question of why you started blogging. Does anybody know why they started blogging? Was it just, do you have it in your head? Most people are going to, if you do have the answer to this in your head, you're probably still doing it today. Does that make sense? So this is like crucial. You've got to start with this. If you don't know this, don't start your podcast. Because what will happen is you'll get like 2 episodes in, 10 episodes in, and you'll be like, not so much. I think this is too hard. And then you'll forget why am I doing this again? This is really hard, and you'll stop. All right, the medium. How many people in here love writing? Writing, okay? Good number of them. How many people like music? Okay, how many people play music in here? Oh wow, okay, a lot of musicians, good. How many people like video? They like to create video. Nice. Okay, we got a lot of talented people in here. How many people like art or drawing or painting? Okay. So, what you just raised your hands to, one of those is your core medium. It means this is the medium that you communicate the best at, typically, right? And you got to know what that is for yourself. So this is the second question you got to answer. What is my medium? What is my talent that I can communicate the best at? If it's not audio, if it's not your voice, podcast might not be best for you. And that doesn't mean you can't start a podcast. It just means you might need a co-host whose medium is talking, words, audio, music, right? So you can team up with somebody that's a superstar in audio to have sustainability and do a podcast right. But you don't want to get into it if you're not somebody that likes to talk, right? You can tell right away if you get on a podcast and it's just awkward. You're like, man, this is, ugh. Even when you put it on 1.5 speed or 2 speed, you're like, this ain't happening. So definitely make sure that the medium of podcasting that you're choosing is in alignment with who you are as an artist, as a person, or you get the right people on your podcast if you're going to, direct one that do have this as their medium. 3, niche. Okay. Everybody in here is in a niche, whether you know it or not, right? Whether personally or in business, you have a niche. Now, the gentleman yesterday that presented, he talked about Red Bull, right? So Red Bull sells energy drinks. That's their niche, right? That's not necessarily what they would create a podcast about, okay? So you think about what niche does your business serve, or do you serve personally, okay? So if you like, how many of you guys like, I don't know, what are some things that you guys like to do personally? You guys mentioned music, right? If you guys wanted to start a music blog, that would be an entertainment niche, a music niche. If you wanted to teach how to play guitar, that would be like an education niche, right? And you look in iTunes or any of the podcast platforms, they're all going to try to put you in a category. You want to know what that category is ahead of time so you can kind of see what other podcasts are in your niche that you are also going to be having similar conversations with. Because the reason I say that is you're going to know who your peers are. So when you start a podcast, you're going to know, hey, this other podcast is talking about the same stuff that I am. They're going to be interviewing people that you could have on your show. So right away, you can just look through the list of podcasts and say, man, I'm going to interview that person, and get them on my podcast. If it's an interview podcast, okay? Now, these podcasts you can do yourself. You can interview people. I do both on mine. We do, I do where I talk just monologue, and I do ones where I interview other people. You can do ones where you have just you can have 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 people on a podcast. It's kind of hard that way, but you can have as many people as you want, but the key is to keep the conversation lively and going and interesting to your audience. Now, talked about Red Bull, right? Energy drinks, that's different than their audience, okay? Who is Red Bull's audience? It's the adrenaline junkie. It's the extreme sports enthusiast, right? It's the living on the edge kind of people, right? That need that adrenaline, need that energy drink, need to stay up all night, need to do whatever, right? So if you cross all 3 of these together, you're going to get this sweet spot. Now, the reason I'm putting this together is because your niche and your audience might not listen to podcasts, or there's going to be a subsection of them that actually listen to podcasts, right? You got to know that for your niche. You got to know and do some research and know your audience well enough to know, how much of the, extreme sports people are listening to podcasts. You have to know that if you're Red Bull and creating a podcast, right? Whatever niche that you're in and however that audience overlaps. Now you might think, niche and audience are the same thing. I'll give you an example that's different. Sometimes it's the same thing, right? So for my podcast, The Tax Pro Nation, independent tax professionals is our niche and our audience. But when we did our research, we noticed that it was typically white males from, 45 to 65 mostly, that own these family businesses that are about 4 tax pros per independent family business. And that is a significant portion of the people that listen to podcasts. So we knew that that was a good match for that podcast. And so we went ahead and did it, rather than doing the research on how many of those 45 to 65-year-olds watch YouTube videos, right? So we had it down to like, should we start a podcast or should we start a vlog, a video blog, right? So those are kind of questions that you have to understand. Align with your audience, your niche, who you are, what's your best way of communicating, and what your why is. ROI. All right, you got to answer this. Why? What's your benefit? Okay? You got to know this. You got to answer this question. If you're in business, a lot of business people are going to be like, what am I getting? What's my money? How much money am I going to make off this? And remember, if your why is short-term tactics, if you're just like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast because it's hot and trendy, and I'm going to jump on the train, I'm going to make a lot of money because I see this other guy making a lot of money. That's the wrong approach. It might work for a little while, but not really. And really by now, most of the folks that are doing really well, they've been in it for a while. I remember podcast kind of took off in like 2006-ish, got really popular, and then it kind of died off for a while, and now it's made a huge resurgence back up again. But the ROI is really a long-term game. If you're in it for any sort of money, I would say probably not going to happen, okay? The reason that I do podcasts has a long-term vision. It's a long-term connection with people. It's a long-term benefit to the audience that I like, that I want to do business with, or I want to hang out with, or I want to do cool projects with. So ROI is going to have to be either non-tangible, I would encourage you, non-tangible benefit, or long-term. Now, Tax Pro Nation, that's a business podcast that I have, right? So I have to make a business case for that. The business case is a branding case, not a sales case. Does that make sense? Sales meaning somebody's going to listen to it and then go buy something. Branding is like, we're going to create a brand in the marketplace where when they think Pronto Tax School, they think, man, these people care about us as tax pros, and I'm going to go to them when I need to be educated, right? So that's a long-term process, and we're going to develop a relationship with these people over a long period of time so that they think of us long-term, and so that's the benefit on that. You have to think about that, what that is for you, right? So you really got to think, and this is, what benefit am I going to get non-monetary? You guys got that in your mind? Anything? Any good ideas? Some people, they just want to feel like they're part of a community. That's a great return on investment, right? You want to meet, some people, their return on investment is, I'm going to meet all the influencers in my niche. That's huge, right? If you're new to an industry or you want to break into an industry, start a podcast and start interviewing all the movers and shakers in that industry. You have a platform now. You can do that. You get to do that. If you do a good podcast, you now have permission to reach out to all the people that you look up to in your niche that you think are awesome. You get to interview them now. You get to have them on your podcast. So that might be your return on investment. But you got to know what that is before you get started so you can really have the right approach. All right. Quality. This one's the big one, right? Everybody's like, oh, what gear do I need? I tried my iPhone and I tried this mic and all of that is tied to quality, okay? Now, if you guys are in a movie theater and the visuals go out, everybody's gonna pretty much chill and just wait. But if the audio goes out, everybody's like, oh, the movie's over, we gotta leave. Audio is over 50% of a film. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's that important. So our ears are actually more sensitive than our eyes. So when you're listening to a podcast, you are actually picking up on way more information than you are through your eyes, visually. And emotionally, too. So when you listen to a podcast, you're connecting on a different level than you are just visually. So quality is actually a lot more important on a podcast than you would think. So if you have background noise, background static, you got the airplane flying overhead, you got all this stuff going on, you got your kids crying in the background, it's going to be very distracting, and it's not going to lend itself to a successful podcast. Now, I mentioned Gary Vee earlier. The dude has horrible quality. He records on an iPhone. He does all sorts of stuff, but he spits fire, right? His audience is rabid fans, right? They love everything he says, even if it's junky quality. It's very rare that you're going to be able to pull that off, especially if you're starting a podcast. So I would encourage you to, through this presentation, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks, but quality, strive for the highest quality, but I will say, if you're those folks that are on the fence, like you're not kind of sure you want to maybe try it out, just use your iPhone. It's fine. Just use your iPhone. So don't think that you can't start a podcast unless you get the best mic and the best gear. All you're going to do is procrastinate. That's all that is. That's you being scared and blaming, I don't have a good mic for not getting started. So don't do that. You can get started right now if you want. And actually, if you don't care about what I say from now on, you can just go download the Anchor app on your phone, and it will literally allow you to record your entire podcast on your phone and publish it to iTunes and Spotify and every platform you can think of today. That's how cool it is, right? And that's how easy it is today to start a podcast. So quality, yes, it's important, but it really depends on your goals. The folks that definitely raised their hand today that were like, I'm definitely starting a podcast, okay, you're going to want to invest in some gear. I'm going to show you what that looks like. But if you just want to try it out or you're thinking about it, just try it. You can delete it. You can take it off here. Actually, Anchor has a little part of the app where it's kind of like Instagram stories, where if you don't like that one, you can just let it disappear in 24 hours. So you can actually try out a podcast and let those episodes that you recorded just fade away and disappear. Okay, so it's actually kind of a cool way. It's actually how I got started. When I did my personal podcast, when I got started, I wasn't sure what I was even going to sound like, what my voice was, or how I was going to come across. And so I actually recorded some on Anchor just to try it out and let those kind of disappear. Let the junky ones just go. And then the ones that I liked, I kept. And so you can do that too. So don't feel like quality is this big, scary monster that's going to prevent you from moving forward. Okay? All right, gear. What mic, what, recording unit, what software, all this stuff, right? Here's my setup. If you want to go right now, you can go to kit.com/JeffDole. You can see every piece of gear that I have. And to break it down here, these are Shure mics, SM7Bs. These are what all the pros use, right? The Joe Rogans, the Mark Marons, the NPRs, all the top folks, they use these kind of mics. These are on a boom arm stand to the desk. Some people have them where they hold them. Some people have them where it's on a stand coming up from the desk. It really is just a comfort thing, how you want to do it, the preference. But these are the top mics. This is an XLR cable that goes into a Zoom H6. The old one that a lot of film people use is called a Zoom H4n. But basically, this gives you XLR inputs. So the mic goes into the H6. This is the recording unit. I don't actually need a laptop to do this. So this is a totally mobile unit if you want to do it. It records it to here. If I wanted to have a call-in guest, I would have this little jack right here that would jack into the phone. Or I could jack into anything else. The computer, if I wanted to do a Zoom recording of it and get a video of it, or just an audio. And then this little guy right here comes out. This is a 5-way splitter. So this is where my headphones are going to come out of. And this is my guest on the show, tekMountain, Andy Fry. And so these are our headphones. But if you had guests, they would just plug their headphones into these other jacks. This is just a powering. My laptop's actually powering this, but you can have batteries in it and go mobile. Guys, that's pretty much it. And maybe a pen. Right? So that's it. That's simple, right? This is pro. This is pro level. Okay? So the equipment has gotten a lot simpler. Anybody in music, they used to run like boards, like mixing boards? Anybody know what I'm talking about? it used to be kind of complicated back in the day. I mean, you used to have to really like have your, all your frequencies right and your mixing and everything. It's really easy today. Really super easy. All right, software. If you're the kind of sort of crowd, there's free software for this. It's just audio editing software. If you're on a Mac, download GarageBand. Make sure you have GarageBand. Super easy, super simple. You can do really great stuff with GarageBand. If you're on a PC, download Audacity. It's free, easy. You can use it. All of these have they're called a DAW, and they basically they're just they allow you to edit. So if you're a musician and you use Logic or you use Ableton or I use Cubase, you can use your music DAW for this if you want. If you're super pro and you have a DAW, great. You can use that as well. So there's a bunch of apps on your phone that you can use as well to mix audio. Anchor actually lets you do some stuff as well in the app, so you can do that as well. But the key here is there's free options, and then there's really pro expensive options if you want to go that route. And the only reason that you really want to do that, let's say you have, if you just have a solo podcast where you're just recording yourself, and you don't want to have any music, great. That's fine. You don't really need a lot of software to edit a lot of stuff. But usually what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to record an intro to your podcast. Hey, this is Jeff DeLon about blah, 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 blah. This is what I'm going to talk about today. And then you just have that with some music on it, and you put that on the timeline. So every music editor has layers, and you just stack layers of audio on each other. So you kind of have like that music layer, you have your intro layer, you have your speaker layer. If you have more than one speaker, they might have their own layer. And then you're just mixing it and burning that off to an MP3 to upload, right? That's it. So this is going to be a slight learning curve if you want to do it yourself. There's tons of people that can help you do this too, so don't feel like this should be a barrier at all. But you got to decide what route you're going to take. Are you going to go the free route, GarageBand and Audacity, or are you going to go the pro route if you already know a little bit about audio? Or you might know a friend in town that's really good with audio, and you're just going to record it, and you're going to send them the raw files or send her the raw files, and they're going to do it, right? So that's a possibility too. Okay, workflow. We're almost done. The workflow that I mean, there's a million different ways to do this, right? But the workflow that I found that works the best for me, it's a 7-step process. The first is write the outline for the show. And this is basically like topics that you're going to talk about with your guest or, just yourself. These are going to help you to prompt you so that you don't have any dead air where you're just like, yeah, so how about the weather today, right? Because nobody wants to listen to that on a podcast. Like, you got to be quick, you got to know what you're talking about, you got to move to the next thing. So, first thing is, you got to write down what you're going to talk about. Just bullet it out, write the steps down, and then that helps you. So when you're in a conversation with a guest, you actually know what your talking points are. You know that they wrote a book, you know the title of the book, you know a link that you saw. This will also help you in a step later in the workflow where you write your show notes. So you write your plan, you schedule the logistics. Where am I going to record? Who am I going to record with? Do I have all the equipment ready? Are my batteries charged? Do I have all the mics and whatever I need? Everything's ready. And then the third step is you record it. That's pretty easy, right? You with me so far? Plan it, write it out, plan it, logistics, and then record it. At that point, a lot of people choose to just stop. That's the funnest they have in podcasting because they outsource everything else. Okay? So if you want to do that, great. That's awesome. You don't have to do the rest of the steps. So if you just want to have fun with podcasting and interact with influencers in your field and just have a really good time on a phone call that's recorded, you're done. That's great. You can outsource all the rest. The fourth step is editing. So once you're done recording, you're going to send all those files to somebody to edit. They're going to actually put your bumpers on it if you have music, if you have an intro. They're going to mix it, they're going to master it, they're going to normalize it, they're going to do all the things you need to do with audio to make it sound good. They're also going to edit it. So once you listen to it back after they do the edit, you're going to want to listen to it for anything like, if you have any profanity and you're a clean podcast, iTunes has a designation, right? So if you're going to be a potty mouth, you have to say explicit. If you want to be a clean podcast and you say clean, you got to edit out all those bleeps, right? So you're going to listen for stuff like that, tell your editor, hey, at this second, I need you to cut that out. Or maybe you just said something that was kind of off, or you didn't really like it, or you had a lot of owns, right? So you want to cut those out. So that's your opportunity on a podcast to really cut out a bunch of this stuff that just, you want to make a good audio recording. So you would tell your editor, or you do it yourself, hey, from second 2 minutes and 32 seconds to 2 minutes and 40 seconds, I need to cut that section out. So that's editing. After you edit, you are going to write your show notes. Okay? Now this is going to help out if you planned it ahead of time well to write your show notes, because you're going to have the link that you mentioned. So if you're interviewing somebody and you mention their book, you want to have that link in there in the show notes. And you'll hear if you're listening. How many people listen to podcasts in here? All right, there's a lot of you. How many don't listen to podcasts? All right. In the back. Okay, cool. You'll hear that it's common in podcast world. They'll say, oh yeah, this video I saw last night, oh, it's so funny. I'll put that in the show notes, right? Like whatever they're saying. And that just means there's a link on the platform that they're listening to the podcast on that they can click, and it'll say all of the web links that they mentioned on the podcast, or all the people, or the locations, so that you don't have to hear it and try to Google it. You can just click in and it'll go right to whatever it is they're talking about. That's super helpful for engagement. It's also helpful for those folks that are doing a business podcast or even a personal podcast. If you want to actually know who your visitors are, you need some sort of call to action at some point in the podcast that gets them to download something so you get their email. It's very important if you're trying to build an audience that you control. Right now, all of the platforms, all of the podcast platforms, you don't actually know who your listeners are. It's really kind of annoying. You just know that they downloaded your podcast. You don't actually know who their name is or what their email is or any way of really contacting them. So the show notes is a way that you can actually capture their email and their information and then communicate with them on a regular basis over another medium, right? So that's super key. So as you're thinking about your process in starting a podcast, what's the one thing that your audience would actually like to go give their email to get, right? It could be a worksheet, a PDF, it could be another podcast that's a secret podcast. That's kind of interesting, right? Hey, you want to hear the bonus footage for this episode? I got that, but you got to put your email in, go to the link, right? So show notes are really important. After the show notes, you're actually going to publish. Now you would think publishing is easy. It is easy these days. I mentioned the Anchor app. Literally, you just hit publish, and it goes everywhere. It's that easy on Anchor. You go to iTunes, it goes everywhere, right? On other platforms like Libsyn, we also use Libsyn for tax pronation. That is a little bit more complicated because what it does is it actually optimizes your podcast for each platform. So for instance, it'll push it out on YouTube and put a picture of your podcast in a 16 by 9 image, and then put your audio under it. So it's not really a video on YouTube, it's like an audio with just a picture, but it'll do that for you. So it'll publish to things like YouTube, SoundCloud. It'll publish on all sorts of platforms that are not really podcasting platforms. And so it kind of does the final step that I'll mention, which is share it or market it, right? So unless you tell people about it, nobody's going to know, right? So you got to do that. Now, Libsyn does also the marketing part of it too. So it'll push it out on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the different platforms, right? So it'll actually do the publishing on the podcast platforms and the marketing in one shot, which is really cool. Now, you're going to have to pay for Libsyn, because what Libsyn does, and the ones like it, there's a lot of other ones out there, but they host your audio. So think about YouTube, but for audio. So YouTube hosts all your videos. It used to be back in the day. Does anybody remember when you had to host your own videos on your own server? And all the bandwidth that it would cost to do that. When YouTube came out, it was so cool because I was like, oh, thank you. You do that. So if you ever went viral, it'd be like the worst day of your life back in the day when you had to host your own videos. Because if you went viral, all those million views would be a cost to you on hosting. It's kind of like if somebody was on your phone for, a million hours. You get a bill and you're like, thank you, you went viral. Now you owe us $100,000. You're like, oh, great. So it's really good that there's a hosting platform. So YouTube does videos. These other podcasting specific platforms, they host your audio, so that if you ever do have a viral podcast or somebody promotes it that's got 10 million followers and everybody's listening to it, you don't get buried on your server, it doesn't shut your website down, etc. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So you kind of got a pro option in kind of the professional paid hosting services, and you got kind of the free options. You can also, if you're really techie and you love getting into the code and some of the manual sides of it, you can on your WordPress website or something create your own feed of your own podcast, host your own audio MP3 on your own website, and just upload that link to your feed to iTunes, and they'll just publish it for you. And there's a lot of republishers that just republish iTunes feed, which is why iTunes is the #1 platform right now for podcasts. The number 2 by far. The number 2 is Spotify at 7%. So you've got 79% of the podcasts are on iTunes platform. That's where all the listeners are. Only 7% of the market share is Spotify, and you got everybody else. Okay. Tip for you. This is the 10th and final tip. Seasons. Okay. Seasons, does everybody know what seasons are? Like TV seasons? Episodic, okay. So if you're watching a show and it has like 12 episodes in the season, and then they stop publishing them on your favorite channel or platform, are you upset? Well, if you love the show, right? But you understand why they're stopping, right? It's understandable. You're like, oh, it's the season is over. Okay. But most people, when they start a podcast, they're like, I'm just going to do this forever. And then by episode 20, they're like, oh, this is crazy, man. Well, guess what? The film industry already figured this out. It's called seasons. You just pick, I'm going to do a sprint of 10 episodes or 12 episodes or 20 episodes or whatever you want to do. Some people do 50 or 100. But you pick a season number and you nail that. And then you take a break. And then you assess, was that good? Was that fun? Did I have a good time? Do I want to keep doing it the way I'm doing it, or do I want to change it up? Do I want to change it to an interview style? Do I want to get another co-host? Do I want to change the music? Do I want to change the intro? Do I want to buy some mics and go pro? Do I want to, make it easier and go totally, free and easy, right? So that gives you an opportunity to pivot in between seasons and just change it up. A lot of people are creative, they want to change it up, it's okay. So seasons are like the secret weapon, the secret tip. Don't just do this like blogging back in the day where it's like, man, I just got to do a blog every day for my life. I got to do it every week forever. And if I stop, And here's the other thing I'll say about this. Don't beat yourself up if you miss a week. We're not Oprah, we're not trying to change the world here. We're not solving cancer, right? So if you miss an episode, it's not the end of the world. Now, you'll read all the gurus and all the people that do podcasts and never, consistency, never miss an episode. Oh my gosh, you're going to lose people. It's going to be horrible. Okay, yeah, you'll lose a few people, but if they like you, they'll come back. It's okay. And then don't feel the need to do the whole thing where it's like, guys, I'm so sorry I was gone for a month and I didn't post. And 10 minutes goes on the podcast, you're like, I don't care. Get into the podcast, right? So don't feel bad about missing, but try to stay consistent. So try to commit that when you have a season, pick the number. I'm going to do 12 or 10 or whatever, and just commit to that. So that means when you start, just make sure you publish on whatever your schedule that you decide is at the same time, same day every week, or every day, or every month, or however often you're going to do it, and stay consistent through that season. Does that make sense? Everybody still with me? Okay. Cool. All right, so there it is. Those are the 10 conclusions. You can do this. There's tons of resources. If you want to do it, you can do it. It's super easy if you just want to start with the Anchor app. And you can get as pro as you want to go. You can go as crazy, complicated as you want, but it doesn't have to be. And it can be really fun. It can be really rewarding. And it's actually changed a lot of people's lives. I kid you not, the stories that are on this stuff, You know, if you're new to an industry and you want to create a podcast because you want to interview and get to know all the influencers in that field, it will change your life. It will change your life. You'll be in a community. I think the Jim Rohn quote, you know, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It applies to podcasts. I mean, if you're on these podcasts every week and you're talking to these influencers and these people that are out there doing what it is that you want to do, don't you think that's going to rub off? I mean, don't you think? And then you're going writing the notes, writing the show notes on it, you're really digging into the material. You're going to be a better person. You're going to have a better business. It's going to really help you. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you.